Hi everyone, welcome to the algorithm module. I'm Hyung-Sik Kim from the Department of Computer Science, Seongyungan University. I would like to note that algorithms are simply step-by-step instruction for solving problem. They appear everywhere, from finding the shortest route to categorizing your photos or sorting information online. In this module, you will learn how to think clearly, break problem into smaller parts, and create and design solutions that work. It's less about coding and more about improving the way you approach problem. I hope you will enjoy this topic. Let's start. Okay, as I already introduced, my name is Hyung-Sik Kim, a professor in Department of Computer Science. My main research interest is computer security, particularly in solving real-world security problems based on data analysis. I prefer to communicate via email. My official school email is hyung@skku.edu. If you want to communicate with me, please send the email to this email address. At the time, please include algorithm in either English or Korean in the subject of your email. This is my personal web page. If you are interested in me in more detail, please visit this website. Okay, let's start today's course. What is an algorithm? An algorithm is any well-defined computational procedure that takes some value or set of value as input and produce some value or set of value as output. In other words, an algorithm is a sequence of computational steps that transform the input into the output. Let's look at very common example that many of you already use everywhere. That is the YouTube algorithm. As you know, the YouTube algorithm is specially designed to keep you watching more video, encouraging you to browse for longer. When you watch any video, more video will be shown on the right panel based on your viewing history, making you want to browse more. So you spend much time in watching YouTube video clip. Okay, this figure illustrates the core idea. First, user's viewing history serves as the input to the system. This includes all of your past interaction on the platform, such as the video you have watched, what you have searched for, and even your likes or dislikes. From this input showing your preference, your watching preference, the system generates recommended video, which is the output. The personalized suggestion YouTube offers you next. Now let's consider the algorithm itself. This is where the core work is done. The algorithm doesn't just simply collect your past interaction. Instead, it analyzes these interactions like your watch and search history to understand your viewing pattern, preference, and watch time. Based on this deep analysis, it performs computational steps to decide what to recommend next. The ultimate goal here to provide optimal recommendation, keeping you engaged and satisfied, and encouraging you to watch even more. Our course will focus on designing this efficient method for making such optimal decisions for various real-world problems, just like YouTube does. Okay, as you can see, I would like to compare algorithm against data structure. We often hear both algorithm and data structure when you're studying computer science. But what's the difference? Let's think about it with a simple example, fishing. You can see that in this picture, you can see a fishing rod. We call this a data structure, which means the tool we use to manage and access data. Data structure is similar to a tool to solve the problem. And also you can see this picture. This picture illustrates the step to catch a fish. This is like an algorithm, a clear process to solve a problem. You can see this figure illustrates the detailed step to catch a fish. In summary, algorithms are how we solve problems. Data structures are what we use to do it. Surely, both are essential, just like you need both skill and equipment to catch a fish. Okay, now let's look at the key characteristics that define a valid algorithm. What makes something a robust and reliable algorithm? First, an algorithm must exhibit finiteness. This means it must always guarantee to finish after a limited finite number of steps. An algorithm simply cannot run forever. Second, we have definiteness. Every single step within the algorithm must be clear and unambiguous. There should be absolutely no room for confusion about what action to perform at any given point. Next, every algorithm needs to clearly specify its input. That's the data it starts with, and its output, which is the distinct result it produces. In the previous slide, I already explained input and output for the YouTube algorithm. At the time, input is users watching behavior and history data, and output is the YouTube video clip to browse. Finally, a crucial feature is efficiency. An algorithm must be efficient. It should make wise use both computational time and memory resources. In summary, a good algorithm is always clear in its step, efficient in its execution, and guaranteed to produce a result. Okay, what are our goals in this module? In this module, we'll focus on three main objectives. First, to give you a thorough understanding of core concept of various fundamental algorithms. Second, our goal is to help you applying algorithm to your actual programming. In computer science, programming is very important. You need to implement your own software based on your programming. At the time, algorithms is essential to make your program more efficiently. Third, our goal is to improve your ability of design and analysis of algorithm. I believe the study of algorithm is fundamental to computer science and engineering. When you work with algorithm, our focus typically involves two main tasks: design and analysis. Probably some of you believe that maybe design is only important part. However, you can see that without analysis, it is not possible to find or design more efficient algorithm. So both parts are highly essential. Analysis is about understanding how good the designed solutions actually is. We predict its cost, specifically how much computational time and memory the algorithm will require when it runs. That is, we design an algorithm to solve a problem, and then we analyze it to ensure that our solution is efficient and effective. Now, let's look at a concrete example to understand why designing efficient algorithm is so crucial. Imagine you're investing in stocks with daily price changes. Some day you gain money, that are positive changes, and other day you lose money, that are negative changes. Your goal is to find the consecutive days where the total gain is the highest. Your goal is to find the consecutive days to maximize your profit. Consider this: if you have stock data for just a few days, it might be easy to manually find the best consecutive sequence. But what if you have data for 100,000 or even millions of days? Manually calculating every possible sequence would take an immense amount of time. This is precisely where the design and analysis of algorithms become incredibly important. We need an algorithm that can identify this maximum profit quickly and efficiently, even with vast amounts of data, such as 100 days, 1,000 days, or even million days. This problem will serve as powerful illustration throughout our course of how different algorithmic approaches can drastically impact performance. Okay, let's illustrate this problem with specific instance. Here, we are given an input list representing daily stock profit and losses: -3, 2, 4, -1, 3, -10, 6, -4. Our goal is to find the maximum total profit from any group of consecutive days. Let's look at some possible sequences and their profit. Maybe you can consider several combination of sequences. For the sequence of -3 to 4 and -1, in this case, total profit is 2, 6 -3 and -1. That is, total profit is 2. Maybe if we consider 2, 4, -1, 3, in this case, total profit is 9 -1, that is 8. How about a longer sequence like 2, 4, -1, 3, -10, and 6? In this case, total profit is 4. How about 4 -1, 3? In this case, total profit is 6. By checking sequences like this manually, probably we can find the maximum possible profit is 8. Okay? But here is the key question: how can we efficiently find maximum profit sequence, especially when you have thousands or even millions of days of data? We call this problem of finding the maximum contiguous subarray sum. We are given an array of integers including both positive and negative values. The goal is to find the indices of subarray where sum is the largest. In this example, the subarray from index 1 to index 4 include the number 2, 4, -1, and 3. Okay? We can find start index and end index. For this contiguous subarray, when added together between this start index and end index, we can get this subarray sum is 8. Probably in this array, the possible maximum possible sum for any contiguous subarray is 8. Okay, this is our answer. However, how can we find such a contiguous subarray? Okay, probably we can check all possible subarray. Okay, we call this brute force approach. Suppose we have a list of daily value like stock profit or losses. We want to find the best period, that is, the subarray with the highest total profit. To do this, we could check all possible subarrays. We start with the idea of start point. There are n possible starting position, okay, from index 0 to index n-1. Then, for each starting point S, we look at all possible endpoint, S plus 1, S plus 2, and so on, n-1. So, we are checking all subarrays that begin at S and end at some later index. When we add all of these together, the number of subarray looks like this: n plus n-1 plus n-2 and so on up to 1. This is a well-known pattern in math. The total is roughly n times n divided by 2. We can consider roughly and squared possible ways. Okay. Basically, I would like to explain this more formally. How many subarray do we need to check? There are about n squared subarray to check in total. How long does it take to evaluate a subarray? To evaluate each subarray, we need to calculate its sum. If we calculate the sum from scratch each time, it would take up to n time per subarray in the worst case. However, by using the concept of partial sum, we can calculate the sum of a specific subarray much faster. If we pre-compute the partial sum, finding the sum of a subarray can be done in constant time. This reduces the overall algorithm time complexity to about n squared. Maybe this is not bad. However, can it do better? Okay. To solve this problem more efficiently, we can use a divide and conquer strategy. Here is how it works. First, we split the array in half, and then we solve each half recursively, finding the best subarray in the left and the right part. Finally, we compare the result and choose the larger one between the left and right side. This method breaks the problem into smaller pieces and combine the answers, helping us manage even large arrays more effectively. Okay, probably the divide and conquer strategy looks fine, but is this enough? We can consider our possible candidate from this procedure. When we split the array in half, we can find the best subarray on the left and on the right. Okay? Actually, in our divide and conquer strategy, we already consider the maximum on the left side and maximum on the right side. Okay? So it looks fine. In this example, the best sum on the left side is 6 from the index 1 and index 2. Okay? And also on the right side, we also get 6, just the subarray 6. Okay? But maybe this is not enough. Probably there could be a better subarray that crosses the middle boundary, like 2, 4, minus 1, and 3, which give us a sum of 8. Okay? Definitely, subarray crossing boundary need to be considered. Okay? To solve the problem correctly, we can consider the maximum on the left side and maximum on the right side, and also we need to consider the subarrays that cross the boundary. Now let's think about where the optimal subarray might be. If it lies entirely on the left, the first recursive call will find it. Otherwise, if it is entirely on the right, the second recursive call will handle that case. But what if the optimal subarray crosses the middle? That is a special case we have not handled yet. We need to design a way to look across the boundary and find the best subarray that include elements from both sides. This is our next challenge. To handle subarray that cross the middle, do we need to check every possible pair of indices I and j? In this case, we know that all possible combination should be up to n squared. Definitely, it is not better than the brute force approach. Luckily, we do not need to consider all possible combination. Instead, we look for two key things: the maximum subarray sum ending on the left just before the middle, and the maximum subarray sum starting on the right just after the middle. Okay, we can consider these two parts. As we can see, I moves leftward from the middle and j moves rightward. By combining the best sum from the left and the best from the right, we can efficiently compute the maximum crossing subarray without checking all pairs of I and j. When we calculate the sum of a subarray that crosses the middle, we can break it into two parts. The left part end at index I and include element up to middle. The right part starts just after the middle and end at index j. So the total sum is a combination of values from both sides. I and j each affect the sum, but they don't affect each other. That means we can calculate the left and right part separately and just add them. The simple idea is what makes the divide and conquer approach both elegant and efficient. We can calculate them separately and independently. To find the best starting index I on the left side, we simply iterate backward from the middle. At each step, we calculate the sum ending at the middle and keep track and the maximum. In this example, the best sum occurs when index 1, giving us total profit of 5. Since we only search through half of the array, the time to find index I is just n over 2, which is efficient and easy to implement. Okay, we can find best I by iterating with I decreasing to find maximum sum. As I mentioned here, when I equal 1, the total profit is 5. This is the best, the maximum subarray sum from the middle point. How much time we need to take? What do we need to take? The time to find I is n most n over 2. Okay, similarly, we can also find the best ending index j on the right side. This time, we iterate forward from the middle and calculate the sum starting and at index each index j. In this example, the best sum is found when j equals 4, giving us a total of 3. Okay, this is 3, this is minus 7, this is minus 1, and this is minus 5. So the best sum is 3 when index j equals 4. Just like the left side, we only need to scan half the array, so the time to find index j is n over 2. Okay, so I will explain this in more detail later, but we call this linear time. This is very fast and straightforward. Okay, so how does the full algorithm work? We recursively find maximum profit subarray in the left half of our data, then we do the same thing for the right half. In addition, we also need to find the best possible crossing subarray. That's a subarray that starts in the left half and in the right half, crossing the exact middle point. Once we have the three results, the best from left, the best from the right, and the best crossing subarray, we simply compare them and take the overall maximum profit. Now let's briefly consider the efficiency of this approach. Each time the algorithm divides the problem, finding the best crossing subarray involves checking a number of elements proportional to the size of current selection of data. And the core idea is that the algorithm keeps splitting the array roughly in half repeatedly. To understand why this algorithm is so efficient, let's look at how the algorithm is divided. At each step, we split the array into two halves and solve the same problem on each half. That's why we get two recursive calls, each on a subarray of size n over 2. After solving both halves, we still need to check for a maximum subarray that crosses the midpoint, and this takes about n time. So overall, the total work for size n becomes Tn equal Tn over 2 plus Tn over 2 plus n. This part is for finding maximum on the left side, and this time complexity require for finding the maximum on the right side, and we can also consider the finding maximum crossing the middle point. It takes n. So when we solve this recurrence, in this case, we can get n log n time to run this divide and conquer algorithm. Okay? Basically, this idea is very straightforward, but it is very important to design algorithm by using this idea. Okay? Okay. So how do we actually implement this algorithm? We use a recursive function that follows the divide and conquer step. First, we handle the base case. Okay? Here. If there is only one element that indicating left equal to right element, in this case, we just return it. Okay, this is a base case when you have only one element in this array. Okay, otherwise we need to split the array in half and recursively compute. So we need to calculate the mid index. Okay, like this. In this case, we need to recursively call this function. Okay, max subarray divide and conquer with left index and mid index. Okay, in this case, we can handle the maximum on the left side. Okay, and also we need to find the best candidate on the right side. Okay, so we call max subarray divide and conquer function with mid plus 1 index and right. Okay, in this case the maximum is on the right side. And then finally we can consider the best subarray crossing the middle. Okay, finally we return the maximum of these three results: left max, right max, and cross max. Okay, this structure directly follows the logic we have built so far, and it works efficiently for any input size. Okay, you can see that this is the maximum subarray on the left side, and this is maximum subarray on the right side, and this gray color indicate the maximum subarray crossing the middle point. Here the function max crossing sum is used to find the best subarray that crosses the middle. We scan to the left from the middle, keeping track of the maximum sum ending there. Then we scan to the right, starting just after the middle, to find the best sum on the side. Finally, we add both results together. Since the left and right scan each take less than n steps, this path runs in linear time, just like the rest of the divide and conquer logic. Okay, so far we have seen how divide and conquer solves the maximum contiguous subarray problem efficiently. Its n log n time complexity handles large input sizes well. But can it do even better? Is there a faster algorithm? Yes, we can do better using dynamic programming approach. The idea is simple. We keep adding to the current sum, but if it ever becomes worse than just starting over from the next number, we reset. At each position xn, the best sum ending there is either the previous best sum plus xn or just xn on its own starting expression. Okay, so we use the following formula: memxn equal max memxn minus 1 plus xn, which cover the first case, or xn covering the second case. Okay, if running a sum becomes negative, we discard it and start fresh. Okay, this gives us a fast linear time solution. We apply dynamic programming by scanning the array once and using this formula. This tells us whether to extend the previous subarray or start fresh at each step. For example, we start with -3. Okay. Next, since -3 plus 2 is less than 2, we just repress at index 1. Okay. Then 2 plus 4 is 6. which is better than starting fresh with 4, so we just extend. Okay, we continue this process up to the end. Here, the mem array stores the maximum subarray sum ending at each index. Here, the highest value is 8, 2, 4, 6, 5, and 8. Okay? This is our final answer. Because this method only requires a single pass, it runs in linear time, which is better than divide and conquer method taking n log n time. This shows how a well-designed algorithm can solve the same problem much more efficiently. Okay, I want to iterate this step -3, so we can just keep -3. -3 plus 2 is -1, so we replace with 2. 2 plus 4 is 6, so we just extend. So we store 6. Okay? Next, 6 minus 1 is 5. 5 is larger than -1, so we extend with 5. Okay? 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 is larger than 3. Okay? So we just extend 8. Okay? 8 minus 10 is -2. -2 is larger than -10. So we just extend -2. Okay? Next, 6 is larger than 6 minus 2. So we just replace with 6. Okay? And then next, 6 minus 4 is 2. 2 is larger than -4. So we just extend 2 with 2. Like this. Okay? This is basic idea. And then by scanning this mem array, we can find at index 4, 8 is the maximum subarray sum value. Okay, we understand the concept of dynamic programming for finding the maximum profit. Now let's look at how to implement this algorithm in code at the code level. The core logic as captured by the formula memn equal max mn minus 1 plus an, or an translate directly into our program like this. Okay? In this code, we use two simple variables, the current sum variable and max sum variable. The current sum variable corresponding to memn attracts the best profit we can achieve if the maximum subarray ends at the current position. For each new daily profit, we decide to either extend the previous current sum by adding the current sum or start a new subarray with just the value itself. The max sum variable simply keeps a running record of the overall highest profit found anywhere in the array as we process each day. This implementation is incredibly efficient. It processes each day's data only once, leading to a linear time solution. Its speed grows directly with the number of days n. Moreover, it only uses a fixed small amount of money, which we call constant space. This makes it a highly practical and powerful way to solve this problem. Okay. We have now seen how applying these three different algorithm strategy: brute force, divide and conquer, and dynamic programming. Okay? Here, brute force solves a problem by trying every possible solution, relying on computing power rather than efficiency. Divide and conquer recursively breaks down a problem into smaller sub-problems and then solve them independently and then combine the solution to address the original problem. Finally, we also studied dynamic programming, which solves an optimization problem by breaking it down into sub-problems like divide and conquer. However, we use the solution of a sub-problem to construct the optimal solution to the overall problem. We usually just store the solution to the sub-problems, and then we can just reuse the solution of the sub-problem to find final optimal solution. Among these, dynamic programming often provides us with the optimal solution for many different type of optimization problem. Okay, but sometimes divide and conquer approach is better than dynamic programming. So definitely, depending on the problem characteristics, we need to choose the best algorithm strategy. Okay. Okay. Thank you.